There is a Sumerian text that describes a man who descended into a cave beneath the eastern mountains. He went in with 3 priests. He came out alone. He told the people waiting outside that he'd been inside for a few hours. According to the text, they had been waiting 9 days. He had no memory of those 9 days. But that is not what scholars dwell on. What they keep skipping past is what his colleagues wrote about him afterward. They did not write about what he saw inside. They wrote about what happened to his face when he came out. They wrote that he could no longer sequence events correctly. They wrote that he would describe things that had not happened yet as if they were memories. For the rest of his life, he would look at the night sky and tell people a star was about to appear, seconds before it did. The Sumerians had a word for what he had become, and they had a name for the place that made him that way. In the Louvre Museum in Paris, there's a clay tablet, catalog number A04153. Scholars have studied it for over a century. Entire books have been written about it. And almost every researcher who has worked through its cuneiform script has noticed the same anomaly, mentioned it in a footnote, and moved on without addressing it. The tablet describes a place called Kiyur, not the mythological underworld where the Sumerian dead go. Something more specific. The tablet describes Kir as a physical location beneath the eastern mountains with a real entrance and specific characteristics that anyone who entered would immediately recognize. The air inside is described as heavy with bitter mineral. The deepest chambers are described as producing sounds of water that cannot be seen, and the walls are described as glowing faintly, blue-white, without fire or torchlight. This detail appears in the Nippur tablets and almost never gets quoted. Bioluminescent minerals are a documented geological phenomenon. They only form at significant depth, in cave systems preserved for tens of thousands of years. Whatever Kir was, the people documenting it were going very deep. But the anomaly buried in the tablet is not the location. It is this. The time experienced inside Kir does not match the time that passes outside. Assyriologist Dina Katz at the University of Groningen spent years cross-referencing every major Sumerian underworld text against one another. What she found was that this temporal inconsistency was not a scribal error, it was consistent across every text. Every single account of a living person entering Kir and returning shows the same pattern. Hours inside, days outside. The Sumerians were documenting a place where time did not behave normally. They had a phrase for it that appears across multiple tablets, written in different cities, centuries apart. Ud-da-nu-mi-a, time that is not like time. This is not mythology reaching for metaphor. Mythology does not need technical vocabulary. This is documentation reaching for precision with the language available to it. The fullest account of what Kir actually does to a person is in the descent of Inanna. Inanna, the most powerful figure in the Sumerian pantheon, voluntarily descends into Kir. She passes through 7 gates. At each gate she surrenders something, a crown, a robe, a measuring rod. By the time she reaches the lowest level, she has given up everything she is. She spends 3 days and 3 nights inside. When she returns, the narrative above ground has moved significantly further than 3 days. Scholars call this a continuity error. But here is what they do not quote. When Inanna emerges, the people around her immediately know something is wrong, not because of what she says. The text describes it happening before she speaks. Her eyes, it says, are seeing differently. Not damage, not blind, different. As if whatever mechanism sits behind them had been adjusted for a world other than the one she walked back into. The high priest present named what he saw out loud. He said she had brought Ud-da-nu-mi back with her, that some part of her had not finished returning. The text records no response from Inanna, but the account that gets closest to what entering Kiyur actually does to a person belongs to Enkidu. In the Gilgamesh and the Netherworld text, Enkidu descends into Ki-Ur to retrieve an object. He is warned before he goes, do not wear clean clothing, do not carry weapons. Present yourself as nothing. If Ki-Ur recognizes that you belong to the surface world, it will keep you. Enkidu ignores every single warning. He gets trapped. The god Ea eventually opens a passage in the ground to pull him out. Then Gilgamesh asks him what he saw. Enkidu's answer is not what you would expect from a 4,000-year-old religious text. He does not describe judgment, he does not describe punishment, he does not describe anything that sounds like mythology. The most rigorous modern translation of his response reads, what I saw I cannot explain as you would understand it. The time there does not move as it does here. Ud danu mea. And then the epic describes what Enkidu is like after the descent. He is different. The text does not dramatize it, it simply records it. His relationship with death has shifted, not because he made peace with it, but because he now understands something about time that nobody around him can access. He carries something back that has no name in the surface world. He cannot explain it. It does not leave him. The Sumerians called this the Mark of Kur. Across the texts, there are at least 6 documented accounts of living people descending into Kur and returning. Every single one comes back with the same pattern. They stop sleeping normally. They have difficulty in crowds. Without exception, every account records this specific behavior. They can no longer accurately describe when something happened. The sense that moments exist in sequence, that the past is behind you and the future is ahead, appears to have been disrupted at a level they cannot compensate for. The Sumerians observed this across multiple people, over multiple generations. They documented it, they named it, and eventually they stopped sending people in. The Sumerian texts about Kur are not vague. They give 3 geographic markers that recur across multiple tablets: the mountain where the sun enters, the river that flows backward into stone, and the 7-day journey from the land where bronze is born. Applied to documented ancient Mesopotamian trade routes, those markers converge on one region. The Fergana Valley in what is now Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan was a major bronze production center in antiquity. It is extensively mapped in Sumerian merchant records, and it was a region they traveled to regularly. It is also a region containing one of the most extensive cave systems in Central Asia, the Kanagut system. Soviet geological teams entered the upper sections in the 1960s. The findings were classified almost immediately, but the declassified documents from the 1990s show what they found. Stone walls with precise cuts, water channels carved into the cave floor. On the walls of the lower accessible chambers, the expedition's own field records describe symbols belonging to no known local culture. Several of those symbols, according to researchers who later examined the photographs, were Sumerian cuneiform, 1,500 meters underground. The government pulled the team out in under 3 weeks. The caves were sealed, not with explosives, not with a controlled collapse, but with placed stone. Deliberate. Arranged, you seal a cave with placed stone when you want it to be possible to unseal it later. One of the Soviet geologists on that expedition was a man named Viktor Ilyenko. He gave a single recorded interview before his death in 1998. He described what the team found in the lowest accessible chamber, a stone archway. Clearly manufactured, with precise cuts. It stood approximately 3 meters high, framing a passage that led downward. On the left side, carved into the limestone, a repeating symbol identified by researchers who later examined the photographs as the Sumerian cuneiform sign for Kur. The team sent sonar equipment through the archway. The signal could not reach the far wall in any direction. The equipment was functioning correctly. The void was simply larger than the range of their instruments. The team leader's field note from that day read that whatever this is, it was not built by anything we have a record of. 3 weeks later, they were ordered out. Ilyenko was asked in the interview why he thought the Soviet government sealed it. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said because they understood what it would mean if it was real. There is a measurable, documented, reproducible explanation for what happens to people inside a cave system like this one. And that does not make any of this less disturbing. In cave systems with restricted airflow and specific limestone geology, carbon dioxide accumulates in the lower chambers. At concentrations above 3%, something specific happens inside the human brain. The internal clock breaks. The neurological system that anchors your subjective experience to actual elapsed time stops functioning accurately. You feel completely alert, completely rational. Only one thing is wrong. You have no idea how long you have been inside. Hours pass as minutes. The distortion is not predictable. There is no way to know which direction it is running. This is documented in aerospace medicine and studied in submarine crews. It is a known, reproducible effect, but it cannot explain the cuneiform on the walls. It cannot explain why the Soviets sealed the entrance with placed stone. And it cannot explain what the research team that entered the Cannigut system in 2018 experienced before they reached the blockage. According to field documentation from that expedition, 2 members of the team experienced severe time perception disruption in the lower passage. One, a geologist with over a decade of underground fieldwork, entered the narrowest section with a working watch and a running recorder. He believed he was inside for approximately 20 minutes. His watch showed 3 hours and 14 minutes. His recorder confirmed it. He wrote one line in his field notes. A documentary filmed during the expedition captured that line. Now I understand why the ancients sealed this place. The lead archaeologist on the team reported the same. She experienced roughly 25 minutes, while 2 hours and 40 minutes were recorded. She said afterward that reading the Sumerian Ki-ur texts was the first time she had ever read primary ancient source material, and she believed without qualification that whoever wrote it had been to the same physical location she had just been in. Before they reached the blockage, the team documented the passage walls. They found cuneiform inscriptions beginning about 600 meters in, organized in columns, some matching known phrases from the underworld texts. Near the bottom of one column, carved in a different hand, smaller and more urgent, was a single repeated phrase the team's linguist identified immediately: Udda Numea. Someone stood in this passage 800 meters underground and carved the same warning the Sumerian texts had been carrying for 4,000 years. The team hit the blockage shortly after. They found a placed stone 6 meters deep. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed the system continues on the other side. Their sonar detected the same void Ilyenko's team had found, a space too large to map. The permits to excavate through it have been in review since 2018. The Sumerian texts do not describe the people who returned from Kure as traumatized. The language is more precise than that, and stranger. They describe people who came back with a different relationship to time than anyone around them. Slightly out of step with the present moment, as if the mechanism keeping them synchronized with everyone else had been knocked loose and never fully reset. The texts also record something specific about the families of the returned. That time in their presence felt different, that conversations with them would feel afterward like they had lasted much longer than they appeared to, that sometimes a family member would lose track of an hour without noticing. Some researchers believe the mark of Kure was not contained to the person who came back. The Sumerians observed this, recorded it, and eventually moved the returned to a specific location within the temple complex, where they lived out their lives among each other, among others who understood Udda Numea from the inside. The Sumerians sealed Kure. Not immediately. People were sent in repeatedly over a long period. Each time, someone came back carrying Udda Numea, wearing it in their eyes and the way they moved through the world, at a frequency slightly different from everyone else. Eventually, the high priests made a decision, not because of the risk to individuals, but because of what the returned were doing to the people around them. The disruption spreading. The children of the returned already showing signs of seeing things slightly before they happened. They sealed the source. They carved the warning where anyone with the right vocabulary would find it. One inscription connected to Kure ends with a phrase that has never received a fully satisfying translation. The most direct reading is this: Do not follow the path beneath the mountain, because what waits at the end of it is not darkness and not death. It is the place where you will be shown time that does not belong to you. Not a warning about monsters, not a warning about gods, a warning about what you would carry back out. The cave is still sealed, the permits are still pending. The void the sonar found is still on the other side of 6 meters of placed stone, unmapped, unexamined, officially unacknowledged. Somewhere beyond that blockage, the cuneiform sign for Kur is carved beside a stone archway that no one has passed through in 4,000 years. The Sumerians found a place where time does not work the way it is supposed to. They documented it with more precision than we give them credit for. And then they sealed it. They sealed it because the people who came back were not the people who went in. The question I have not been able to put down since I went deep into this research is not whether the cave is still there. It is whether the changed are still inside it. Udda Numea. Time that is not like time. They warned us. They carved it into the stone. We just stopped reading the walls.